Welcome to There She Is, the podcast by Women's Sport and Recreation Tasmania. This is a space for celebrating women in sport, the athletes, coaches, administrators, volunteers, and leaders who shape our sporting communities. We talk pathways, visibility, lived experience, and what works for women in sport right here in Tasmania and beyond. Because representation matters and every story deserves to be seen. Hi everyone, it's Philippa from Women's Sport and Recreation Tasmania, and today I'm absolutely delighted to introduce you to Kaity Fassina. So Kaity is an exceptional Tasmanian athlete who's represented Australia at the Commonwealth Games, also winning herself a silver medal in weightlifting, and she's since transitioned into shot put. She is an exceptional PE teacher who I've had the genuine pleasure of working alongside. And thank you for joining us today.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm really excited.
I am too. Now, look, when you first meet Kaity, she has a very powerful presence. She is tall, she is strong, she's unapologetically athletic, she's got the undercut, the tattoos, and a lot of confidence that goes along with it. But what you'll quickly discover behind all of that strength is Kaity has a really nurturing spirit and warm heart, which particularly shows up in motherhood and how she is a teacher and a leader. And that combination of power and compassion is something that I really respect and admire about her. So today, Katie's going to be sharing. She's amazing. I love it. And the more you get to know Kaity, the more you see she's actually all marshmallow on the inside. But today, Katie's going to be talking about her journey as an elite athlete and a mum, and the challenges that she's had. And we're going to challenge that assumption that once you become a mother, that your athletic career is over. So she's going to talk about some of the challenges she faced in terms of sponsorship, support and lack of support, and navigating the systems that aren't necessarily designed for mother athletes in mind. And most importantly, how becoming a mum didn't actually hold her back and is actually one of her greatest strengths, and I believe one of her secret weapons to her success. So Kaity, I'm going to hand that over to you now to share your incredible journey with us.
Thank you. All right. So what I'll do is, what I'd like to do is just talk about my journey, just before I get into it. So there are a couple significant moments in my career that I want to talk about, especially with the challenges I faced as being a mum and an athlete. But also I really want to, when I do this talk, the whole purpose of this talk is to just make people realize that, when women have a baby or become a mother, it's not the end of their career. And it's one of the things that I really struggled with, particularly when I first found out I was pregnant, and I want to talk about that as well, and the emotional toll of having that assumption and what that does to you as well. Because as I will talk about more, a lot of feelings that I felt, particularly when I found out I was pregnant and in my career, if I could go back and tell myself, it's going to be okay, I wish I could, because a lot of feelings I felt, I think no woman should ever feel. So this is why I'm here. This is why I'm talking about it, because there are some things that I will talk about which I just think women should never have to feel at any point in their life or their careers or anything, particularly around motherhood and becoming pregnant. So my journey, let's get into it. So first off, I'd like to show you a quick video that I've created showcasing one of the most important people in my life, and also one of the most happiest times of my life. And so, all right. So here I am. That video really resonates. And again, it was a typical Sunday. That was basically a Sunday session. And my son used to come with me, and I'll speak about him a lot in this, in my story. So without talking too much and too quickly, I'll use my presentation to help me just keep myself on track so I don't go on a tangent too much. But so first off, as as said, my name is Kaity. So I am a now retired Olympic weightlifter, but I was an Olympic weightlifter for about 12 years and competed at elite level. I was Australian representative, and today I'm going to talk to you about my journey. I've always said that I think my story is a significant one because it isn't just about the typical eat your green beans, go to training, sleep, keep yourself hydrated, you'll succeed. My story is a little bit more complicated than that, and I love telling it. And I feel that my story can help a lot of people. So now that I'm retired from Olympic weightlifting, any opportunity that I get, I love to tell my story because I have found that it does inspire others. And more importantly, I think it does help others, particularly mums and women. So this is one of my biggest focuses now as a retired athlete and going into more of a leadership space is I want to help women in sport, whether it's a community to an elite level. And one of my side passions is pregnancy and motherhood and competing and training and sport participation. So my journey today I'm going to be talking about particularly is my Olympic weightlifting career and how I managed it as a parent. My main focus is, my time as being a mum to being a Commonwealth Games silver medalist in 2018. At the time, as you can see, my son there was 2 years old. So when he was 2, I did actually go to Commonwealth Games and win a silver medal. And actually, when I look at it, that moment was the peak of my career. And I will talk about that and one of the many reasons why I think this was the best point of my career. So first off, I want to talk about the moment I found out that I was pregnant. So it was in 2015, and at that point I was at Melbourne. I was living in Melbourne, and I was training at a very prestigious weightlifting club, Hawthorn Weightlifting Club. At that time, I had just competed at my first. I'll start that again.
All good. Just reset whenever you're ready.
Yeah. He just told me he had to do a bush wee. Perfect. You might want to put it in.
I think that's almost classic to keep it.
I'll wait till he's finished.
I may even be able to superimpose.
Put a blooper in there. Let's see if you can hear that. Mum, I'm going to do a bush wee. You right? Okay, you back, honey? Go back to yep. Okay, all right, all right. Okay, so I'd like to talk about right now. The slide is when I found out I was pregnant. So I found out I was pregnant in 2015. It was an unplanned pregnancy. So just again, when you talk about women's education, and women's health, I was trialing different contraceptive pills, trying to find something that worked for me, worked with my training, worked with my body, and just during that experimentation, it wasn't working, and I actually fell pregnant. At the time, so 2015, I was living in Melbourne. I was studying at RMIT University. I was also training at the Hawthorn Weightlifting Club. I was also being trained by one of the best coaches in Australia and also world champion, Yurik Sarkisian. So I was really heavily into my training. I had just gone to my first world championships. I was looking at training and starting my 2016 Olympic campaign. So at the time, I was one of the contenders. Wasn't sure whether I'd actually be able to make it, but I was in the group. There were eyes on me, and it was the first time that I really thought okay, I actually might be able to do so. I actually might be able to make the Olympics. So let's crack down and let's see. I was an underdog, but at that point we're well, we got to try. You got to that. I was just stepping into that phase where I was becoming a much more serious and a much more recognized athlete. I was training, things were going pretty well. And then all of a sudden I started to not feel very well at training. I had about a week where I just didn't feel right. I felt very fuzzy. My tendons, my ligaments, I was sore. I just wasn't feeling great. And I think just by, process of elimination, and then I think one of my friends was like, oh, could you be pregnant? As a joke. And then I sort of stopped and thought, well, hang on. I haven't had my period in a little while, just something I wasn't really tracking. I was on the pill and stuff like that. But I thought, oh, I'll just take a pregnancy test just to eliminate it. So I, just to tell myself that I wasn't pregnant. And then it actually came back positive. And I think, like, this is probably one of the first things that I want to talk about, which I think a lot of people don't talk about enough. When I found out I was pregnant, and it pains me and it hurts now to think about it, but in that moment, I was devastated. Like, it wasn't that feeling of pure excitement. It was like crying on the bathroom floor, thinking that I've just like ruined my career. The first thing I thought about was, how do I tell my coach that I'm pregnant? And also the question of like, what am I going to do? When I found out I was pregnant, it was a feeling of this like absolute like despair, and uncertainty and fear. And all of a sudden I started thinking about like what was I going to do? That was the first question that I was like, okay, what am I going to do? And I was really worried about letting other people down. I was really worried about how I was going to impact my partner at the time, how I was going to disappoint my coach. I was thinking about the last 4 years and now I've just been a waste if I decide to have this baby. All these like pros and cons, and it's just not a type of reaction that I think someone really should be put in that position to feel. The next step was, talking to my family and like literally weighing up the pros and cons. And there was a feeling in me though that like there was excitement, and I think looking back at it now, I knew deep down that I wanted to go through the pregnancy and I wanted to have this baby, but I was too afraid to say it. I was too afraid to like let everybody else down and let go of all the work. And also like having no idea what could happen as well, was that fear of, is my career now completely finished? Am I just going to now just retire and that's it? But talking to my parents, talking to my family, and just like the pep talk, the mum pep talk, like it's going to be okay. Let's get through this pregnancy, have the baby, and just see what happens. So that was basically the when I made that decision that, okay, I'm going to do this. And then all of a sudden everyone was excited. Like when I first found out, like no one was really excited, and I talked to my mum about it um later on, and she was like, she was excited when she found out, but she had to keep it in because she didn't know what I was going to do. So it was all just this real like up in the air stressful time until the moment that I said, okay, I'm going to do this. And all of a sudden I was excited, my family was excited, and that's when we went down that path. So it was still quite a rocky moment and process to actually get to that point of excitement. And when I look back at it, I still find that quite heartbreaking that I wasn't really able to have that really surprised, happy, excited moment when I found out I was pregnant. And especially now, looking back at where my life has become and who I've become and what I achieved with my child, I really wish I could go back to that moment and just be happy the way that I wanted to be. But because of just those expectations and what I assumed would mean falling pregnant in my career, I just wasn't able to have that. So training while pregnant, I've got a little video here that I think just sort of shows that, us women, mums, pregnancy, we're capable of doing so many things that we're just not, we just don't know about. So here we are here. So this is me deadlifting 130 kilos at 38 weeks pregnant, just about 3 days before I actually gave birth to Gabe. I'm not recommending that you do this. And this is one of the other things I want to talk about. So when I fell pregnant and I was like, yep, I'm going to do this. I'm going to try and come back. So there was always that idea and hope and optimism that I will come back to weightlifting. But I just had to wing it. Like, I did the typical, like, what would you do if you had no other resources and you're 23, 24 years old? I went to Instagram, which is not exactly the right thing to do. But there was no resources. There was no one I could talk to. No one, like, once I found I was pregnant, no one checked in with me. There was no meeting from the from the Australian Weightlifting Federation or anything. It was just like I just disappeared. I moved back home from Melbourne. I'll speak about that in a moment. But basically, I was just left to my own device. I had a really great supportive coach back in Tasmania, and he's like, you're 24. You seem like you understand what you're doing. I don't really know what we're doing. I'll just follow you. And I was using, the Bloom method and other Instagram pages and just sort of winging it. And I think I just got lucky that I was able to do what I did and it worked out. But it certainly became a bit of a foundation of, okay, this is what we're capable of. And I was Googling things and I was educating myself, and also being an educator and being like a level-headed person, I was able to understand that, look, I'm not going to be able to lift or train as hard. And I knew that. And I certainly found ways, like really quickly, I noticed that I think after about 16 weeks pregnant, just doing power snatches were just really painful around like the hip area. So I just cut those out. I started doing box squats. I started just modifying my training. And I think I was just lucky. I was lucky that it just worked out and nothing, substantial, nothing bad happened. I didn't get injured, and I had a relatively like normal pregnancy, and a normal birth and things like that. And it was just, there was nothing there. I just really had to wing it and just use what I could find on Instagram, on Googling. And even then, like, a lot of times I would just listen to the advice that was sort of, linked to what I wanted to believe. If I saw something that I didn't like, I was like, okay, put that away. I'm just going to ignore that. I'm going to keep on doing this. And, there was just at that point when it came to my career at that moment, and I didn't necessarily feel it at the time, but looking back at it now, certainly as soon as I announced I was pregnant, when it came to my sport and the administration body of my sport, to them, I was gone. They just, it's like I never existed. And, I was just now living in my bubble in Tasmania, doing my thing with this plan of coming back, but no one really knew about it other than my friends and family and my coach that I had in Tasmania. Little side note. So again, just more, evidence that, women, when we put our minds to it, can do anything. So as I said, I was living in Melbourne at the time and I fell pregnant. I was studying a Bachelor of Applied Science and majoring in physical education. I was in my 4th year. So when I found out I was pregnant, it was during first semester. And I was in my 4th year, and I said, I need to graduate. I can't just walk away now. I need to get this done. And I approached my university and my supervisor, and they were really amazing. So they were really supportive. My supervisor, she even said to me, I'm going to make it my goal to make sure that you graduate this year, because I was really like, I need to graduate. This is the only way that I'm going to be able to support myself. I don't want to just walk away now. And when I was 33 weeks pregnant, I graduated, and I went to graduation, and my parents were there, and I got my certificate, and literally the next day I got onto the Spirit of Tasmania and went back home. So, it's just, again, it's just this, just more evidence to show that we are capable. And just because you're pregnant or you've had a baby or things are going in a different path with the right support, and I had to speak up. All of a sudden, I used to be quite shy, but when I fell pregnant, all of a sudden I had this new voice where I could actually speak up for myself. And I actually spoke up and said, I need help. This is my plan. What can you do for me? And the university was great. They made so many exemptions for me and modifications to make things much more easier for me. And I sort of sit back and go, wow, imagine if my sport had gave me the same support as the university. Things could have been maybe a bit different, less stress. And, like I said, I got lucky that what I did by myself just happened to end up being okay. It could have been very different. It could have been quite dangerous. But through my own research, I was able to just somehow, in some way, get it right. But imagine if I was able to go to my sporting body and say, hey, I'm pregnant, I want to come back. And then they could have given me all these lists of modifications and support that they could give me. Like the university did. So it was a really good, looking back, what the university did for me. Sport should have done the same thing, my sport, in some way. So here we are, training as a new mum. So here he is. So Gabriel was born on the 31st of January 2016. Like I said before, it was pretty a normal birth, as normal as they can be in some ways. That photo there, he's about 3 hours old. So very cute baby. He actually came out sleeping. He was asleep, snoring, and very, very casual. And that basically was the presence of what he was going to be like for the remainder of, even now, 9 years later, he pretty much has the same sort of personality. But one of the biggest things that I want to talk about when it comes to, this new motivation that I had. So before Gabriel came along, I guess when we talk about sports psychology, I was a very extrinsic athlete. My extrinsic motivations, that means like my motivation was more about the external rewards and pressures around me. So, I was always training to be the best. I was training for the medals. I was training for the records. I was training to be able to, um, get into teams, get PBs. And I had this, when I look back at it now, quite a toxic mentality of like, if I wasn't training, somebody else was, and I needed to keep on training and I had to push through. And if I was feeling unwell, if I was injured, I would still push through. If I had a bad training session, that would result in a meltdown back at home. If I didn't compete well, I had all this real extra extrinsic pressure on myself. And if I wasn't doing well, it was like, is this even worth it? I'm worthless, all that sort of stuff. A lot of performance anxiety. And then if I found that after Gabriel was born, all of a sudden my main motivation was, I want to do this because I want to make my child proud. I want to train and be a better person for somebody else, not be a better person or better athlete for a gold medal. I want to be a better athlete. I want to be a better person so I can give my son this amazing role model. And it really just changed my motivation and became much more intrinsic. And we look at sports psychology, we know that athletes who are more intrinsically motivated tend to be more successful, or they hold on for longer and they're more resilient and they're able to deal with pressure and they're able to deal with setbacks a lot better. We find that athletes who are more extrinsically motivated, once they have a setback, once they have a challenge, they tend to quit, or they really struggle coming back from that. So all of a sudden, I was this new intrinsically motivated athlete, and my training got better. My training and my mentality, and obviously as well, when things didn't go to plan, if I didn't have a very good day at training, or if I didn't really have the best competition, which quite ironically or quite interestingly, most of my competitions from after Gabriel gave birth to when I went to Commonwealth Games were actually very successful. It was the most successful 2 years of my career. And I do purely believe wholeheartedly it came down to all of a sudden I had this new perspective and this new type of motivation, which I never ever had before. So this is my timeline. So what I did was I wanted to talk about looking at what like my 2 years. So we're really focusing on those 2 years, which were like the highlight of my career. I really want to. So what I did, I've made a timeline. So I gave birth to Gabriel in January 2016. Literally about a 1 week later, I walked into the gym, and I think that was probably where physically I was at my most vulnerable. Like this is where we really tapped into unknown territory. Because I got there and I was like, oh yeah, I used to be able to snatch like 105 kilos. I'll just put 35 kilos on the bar and it'll be like 35, so 2 10s, which is 35 kilos with the bar. And I'll just start doing some power snatches. It'll be fine. A weight that I'd never ever even like worried about. It was a weight that I really like, I'd always skip. Something that I thought, oh, no worries, 35 kilos. Couldn't do it. It felt awkward. It felt just really weird. It was this really bizarre power snatch I did. And all of a sudden, I was like, oh, okay. And my coach is like, maybe you should go back to the bar or start with the broomstick. And at that moment, I was like, oh, okay, this has been a little bit unexpected. But yeah, so we stripped back down to the bar. I trained for about 20 minutes and that was enough. I thought I was going to come in and do like, maybe 50 kilo snatch, maybe 80 kilo clean jerk. No, I did the broomstick and the bar and I trained for about 20 minutes. And that was quite a big eye opener. And again, pretty good evidence where going into territory that no one knew anything about. But in saying that, though, things started to come back pretty quickly. So I started going to training and, managing motherhood. And I have to say that before I keep on going that, at this time I was living with my mum and my mum was helping me raise Gabe. And without her support and without my family support, we had a very, very tight family. My grandparents also came down for the first month. They were living at northern of Tasmania. They came down for the first month to help out. And, everyone was working together. We had a timeline, we had a schedule, and, we knew this was my goal. And, and I had to really rely on my family. So I was very, very lucky that I had a family who could do that for me. Otherwise, coming back to training the way that I did just was not going to be possible at all. So when I talk about my timeline, what I did from behind the scenes, this would not have been possible without the support of my family. And I had really, really good support from my family. Like I had a whole babysitting roster, so I was able to go to training at 4 p.m. And I was done within it. I always made sure I was done within an hour and a half. And that was another thing I talk about, when we talk about mothers and athletes. If you have a mum athlete, she's got an hour and a half. She is grateful for being there, and I trained the absolute hardest in those hour and a halves than I ever did when I had 3 hours in Melbourne to train, and I would be on my phone and I was just taking my time, stretching and just doing all these things that were unnecessary and having extra minutes and talking. After Gabe was born, I knew I had an hour and a half to maybe 2 hours to get back home. So when I got to training, my head was down, my phone was in my bag, and I trained the hardest I ever did because I had stuff to do. I had stuff to get done outside of training. So I walked into the gym a week later after Gabe was born. By April in 2016, I won state titles. By July 2016, I actually went to nationals and I won. And I was quite close to like PB territory. So I didn't do PBs, but I was actually very close to PB. So after 6 months, I had arrived back at being national champion. This is probably one of the times, though, when I look back at it, there was a moment where I'll say like a negative moment associated with my pregnancy and being an athlete. So you can see in my photo here, there's Gabe and I, and with my lifts, and then I'm on the podium and I'm holding him. And, for me, really, and I think for anyone who was looking at that was a pretty amazing moment. Like, you've got a mum who's just come back after 6 months, is now winning national championships, and she's holding her 6-month-old on the podium. Like, that's a really great moment. And the top corner photo, that was of an interview, and the interviewer was so excited and was really like, oh my God, this is amazing. Like, tell me more about your process. They got Gabe to hold the mic. They just saw him as a money piece. I just thought, oh, this is such a great story. This is so amazing. Like, what have you been doing? But at the same time, after the interview, I got approached and was told by someone who was high in administration of the AWF that next time that I go on the podium, I'm not to bring my son because that's not professional, or they didn't see it as professional, or it wasn't a message they didn't want to bring, that other people could do that, or it was against regulations. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm sorry. I accepted that. But at the same time, there was no official rule. There was no policy. It was just that they didn't like it, and they just thought it looked unprofessional and came up to me and just said, you're not to do that again. And I just thought, that there where I had two responses. One who was like, this is so amazing. Tell us more about your story. We want to hear about it. This is so great. To also then having we don't want to see this again. And it did hurt. I felt quite embarrassed. I felt like I'd done something wrong. But really, if there was more of a support system in place there, that moment could have been celebrated, because I believe, and other people believe, was quite an amazing moment. And again, inspiring to others that, I'm not saying you have to come and be a national champion 6 months later, because I had a plan. I had a goal that I was in mind. But this is just showing that we're not broken after a baby. We're not, our careers aren't finished. You can still go and be great and go and do amazing things. But the biggest thing is support, having support. If we've got the right support and the right mentality and the right surrounding and the right environment, having a child, I firmly believe, and will always say, can bring a lot of advantages and success, especially for me. As I talk more and more about this, my best careers was the time my career was those first 2 years leading into Commonwealth Games. So then also in Commonwealth Championships in 2016, so this happened in October, I went to Commonwealth Championships and I won a silver medal. So this was the first seed of, okay, I could do this. I could make 2018 Commonwealth Games. That was the first seed of, okay, I'm in there. All of a sudden, I was recognised again. I was noticed. She's back. Kaity Fassina's back. Okay, let's see what she does next. So that brings me to 2017. So 2017, 2018. So 2017, I went back to nationals. It was actually held in Hobart, and my son did stay home. He didn't come to watch because I didn't want to repeat what happened. But also at the same time, I needed a job to do. Also, in January 2017, I actually got given a TIS scholarship. This was the first like formal support that I was given, and I've always will be so grateful for the TIS and how they treated me. They thought it was great that I had a child. They were really supportive, and they could see the results that I was producing, and they didn't hold it against me, or they didn't see it as a barrier that I had a child. They were just looking at my performance and what I was doing, and I was hitting the numbers. I was getting the medals. I was doing everything, so I got awarded a scholarship, and they were really great. Like that photo down there with me in an ice bath, and Gabe used to come with me on every Friday to my ice bath sessions. And again, people at the door would say hi to him and high five him and thought it was really cute and just thought it was great. And like no one made me feel uncomfortable having to bring my child. And, you know, some of those times I really wanted to get out of that ice bath, and Gabe was there going, come on, mummy, you can do it. You know, he thought it was quite hilarious, made those times just easier. And it was just one of those little things. Like it wasn't a burden. He wasn't hurting anyone. I was doing the numbers, and the TIS saw that, and they were really accommodating to allowing me to bring him where I needed to. They would ask questions about him. They asked me about childcare. They asked me, is there anything they could do to help me with my scholarship? And they were really open to finding ways how they could support me in the best that they could. But at the same time, I think I was just really lucky that I had a really supportive supervisor who saw this and thought this is great. It wasn't like a policy where they had to be supportive. I think I was just really lucky that I had a really great supportive people in that environment who were willing to just see this for what it was, and that they helped me. So I'll always be grateful and very thankful to TIS for that, because they were the first sporting body that actually saw me as an athlete and saw like Gabe and I as a bit of a package, but saw it as a positive and were willing to actually work with it. So 2000, and then in July 2017, I went to junior to national championships. I won again, so I was national champion again. You can see there, I was big badass Kaity Fassina on the platform. And that night I went home and just hung out with Gabe. And that was like how my life was. And I loved it. I loved going to training. I loved coming home to Gabe. He didn't always come to training with me. If he didn't have to, he wouldn't, because I was able to focus. I was very lucky again to have such a supportive family. My great auntie used to come to training sometimes, and play with Gabe and take care of Gabe sometimes. There was a time where I did feel like I was spending too much time with Gabe. So around about this time in 2017, I did decide to start training at nighttime, some of my sessions late at night. So there were some of my sessions that I was training at like 10 p.m. to 12 a.m. at night. I was just very lucky that I was able to have a child who could sleep really well, and he would go to bed at 8. I would go to train. I'd come back at midnight, and he would have a feed, then go back to sleep. Well, let's just say my coach wasn't very happy that I was training 10 o'clock at night. There used to be a camera there, and he would hear the buzzer and he would have a look and he would see me there. So I had someone there watching me. He was concerned, but he knew I had to do it. And he also knew that, again, he trusted me. He knew that I was an adult. I was a responsible adult. And, you know, this was just something that I had to do. I wanted to train like up to 9 times a week. I didn't want to have to be away from Gabe all the time. So there was just that decision. I was like, well, he's going to bed at like 8 o'clock at night and sleeping right through past midnight at the moment. I only lived about 7 minutes max away from the gym. So then I made that decision that I was able to just go train, get there by 10 o'clock, be done with him by 11:30, and then get home back to him ready for his next feed. And again, I was lucky. I was winging it. I was lucky. It was something that would work. So I think 3 to 4 sessions I was doing late at night after he went to bed. These sessions I didn't really need a coach. They were more accessory sessions. And then my main big bulk sessions I was doing at 4 p.m. in the afternoon. At this time as well, which I haven't mentioned, I was working. I did get a job at the same school I'm at the moment. This was just a temporary contract. It was only 0.4 of a full-time load. So I was only there for a few hours throughout the week. It was a PE position, and I just thought I'd go for it. Gabe was only about 8 weeks old, and I thought, well, you know, I'll go for an interview just to get experience, get practice, because the idea was that I would get a job as a PE teacher eventually, and I actually got the job. And 10 years later, I'm still there. So, and they as well were the school itself was very, very supportive of me as well. It's just really interesting looking back that I had so much support from all these other organizations, like the university, the school where I was working at, my family, but the sport that I was actually, making all these sacrifices and making all this dedication to weren't being as supportive. And at the time, I didn't worry about it because, everything was really great. It's more now that I've matured and I've reflected on my career, and people have asked more questions about my career, that I've realized, yeah, actually, I was really alone during that time. When it came to my sporting body, like I had great family, I had great teammates, I had an amazing coach, but no one else outside that in my sporting organization actually knew what I was doing. So again, I went to Commonwealth Championships in September 2017. Now, this was seen as a mini Commonwealth Games. So everyone who was going to Commonwealth Games, who was expected to go to Commonwealth Games in 2018, was going to be at this event. I went to this event and I again got a silver medal. So again, it just ingrained that, okay, I'm on the right path. I'm on the right path here to making it to Commonwealth Games. And I think that, it seemed more like a reality. It seemed doable. So I was more motivated, and the more success I made, the more I wanted to do better, because I wanted to show Gabe, have this amazing achievement that I can show my son later on. That was my biggest driver, was being able to be this amazing athlete and make my son proud. That was like the new dream. And then in December 2017, I went to Commonwealth. I went to the trials, and it was actually one of the best comps I did. It was a PB. I was at the absolute best condition, physically, mentally. They were in Sydney. My family came. My best friend came. Gabe was there. He wasn't at the trials because, again, I just needed to be able to focus. I didn't want to put extra stress on having people to come and watch him, so he stayed with my father. And I competed, I qualified, and then I went back home and gave my son a huge cuddle and celebrated with my family. And then it was announced early beginning of 2018, it was announced that I had actually qualified to go to Commonwealth Games. So I went to Commonwealth Games in 2018, and, people talk about it's interesting where you hear athletes talk about their experiences. A lot of athletes talk about how amazing the food was, and the facilities and the buildings, and the atmosphere and volunteers, and they were all amazing. But for me, one of the best parts was that I was at Gold Coast, and Gabe was able to be there. I was there for nearly 4 weeks without Gabe, or all up with trainings, maybe 3 weeks without Gabe, and I did start to feel a little bit, I guess depressed would be a good one, a little bit lost, a bit disconnected. I was sort of like, I wouldn't say I was getting over the experience, but I really just wanted to see Gabe. I was really missing him. And it was really interesting that when he finally did arrive at Gold Coast, it was just, I don't know, this is really like this feeling of happiness and content and comfort when I finally saw him. And I think that just shows us how much like children mean to you. But once he was there, I think I was able to enjoy my experience a bit more. Like, I loved the facilities, I loved the training, the atmosphere, it was all great, but there was just something missing. And I think it was Gabe. And, I didn't express it. I just kept it to myself. I still trained really hard. I actually did some PBs in the gym, in the training venue there, and got to meet some amazing people. Trained really hard, was really professional, and really endorsed that athlete, like full-time athlete. It was really like overwhelming, amazing, don't get me wrong. But for me, especially those first like couple weeks, there was just a little thing missing, and I think I was missing Gabe. And when he finally arrived, my experience was just a much more joyful, much more relaxed. I remember going into the competition. So I went, I think, yeah, I'll just go through, talk a bit more here. So I remember on the actual day, so I was in the village. Gabe couldn't come to the village. They did have an area where family would be able to meet. I did meet somebody who did have their child in the village. It was a coach, and he said that there was some of formal application process where you could get your child into the village. And I tried really hard to find someone to be able to say, can I bring my child in for the day? Can he come with me? There was rumors. I wasn't really getting a right answer. So in the end, it just became too difficult and I just left it. I really would have loved to have been able to have that experience. And I'm not sure how they got that experience, but there was some sort of process, but it wasn't advertised. It wasn't presented to me. As a mum athlete at Commonwealth Games, that this was an option. So, but that was fine. Like, it was okay. But even just those sort of little things, like if there was a policy out there that was allowing children into the village to see their parents and stuff like that, having that advertised would have been really great. But there was a section where you could leave the village and see your family, and that was still really wonderful. And I was really grateful for that. So, sideline champions it was called, and they had little things for kids to do, and I would go there and hang out with Gabe, and that was just enough. It was enough just to keep me content. And then I remember on the actual weightlift on the actual day of the competition, I met my family and I met Gabe and had my cuddles and all that sort of stuff, and got myself ready. I had a blanket with his face on the blanket, so most athletes have towels on their legs and stuff when they're sitting down. I had a blanket with Gabe's face on it. I remember going out for my first snatch and just being so mortified, so terrified, but yet so like ready to do this. And I was walking up, and it was like silent. When you walk up, it's like etiquette, weightlifting etiquette, that no one speaks as someone's going to the platform. And I'm going up, and then I hear a laugh. And it was my son's laugh. And it sort of brought me out of my zone for a second. And I was like, oh, because, you hear your kids laugh or you hear your kid's voice, and you sort of just automatically go into some sort of mum mode. And I had to sort of try and center myself as I'm going up the stairs. Had a little giggle to myself. But then it also kind of made that moment a bit more special for me, because I was like, oh, he's here. He's watching. Like, this is what I trained for. I trained to have this moment for me and for him. And it was just, this just little moment. And it was something it's just something I'll never forget. And again, I had a really amazing competition. I got all my lifts. One got overturned by the jury, which ended up being one of the most controversial technical rulings ever in weightlifting, but I still got the lift, but it was overturned by a jury. I got all my other lifts. It was an amazing competition. I kept my cool, and again, I just had this. There was just a sense. There was just this feeling of contentment, and just like I was ready to be there. And I really believe that because I was a mum, because I had this intrinsic motivation that I talked about before at such a high level, I was able to just push out all the other stresses, and I was able to cope with the stresses. If I had the same sort of stress pre mumhood before Gabe, I would have crumbled. I actually went to 2014 Commonwealth Games trials, and it was one of the worst competitions to my career because I wasn't mentally prepared. But I think with my mental state and where I was at my life and what my life was like outside of the gym as a mum, it really prepared me mentally to be able to really hone in and accept and be resilient to that pressure. I love this photo. So again, when Gabe did come to arrive to Commonwealth Games, we were allowed to leave the village. So my family was staying in Airbnb. It was one of my mum's friends' places in Queensland, and I just needed to get out. And it was just like a little quick fix. So I signed out for the day, went over to the Airbnb, hung out with Gabe. I have a little smiley face there because he wasn't wearing any pants because, you're not really a toddler unless you're not wearing your pants. And we were playing pool, and there was a pool there, and we just spent the day just hanging out. And it was just nice to be able to like be centered again and just feel like, just this little part of my life I was really missing. So I was able to just walk away from the village for a day, go be with my family, hang out with Gabe. And it was just that little quick fix. I was like, okay, I'm good now. Let's go back to it. I just needed just a day, and I was able to do that. And I think that for mentally, that really just helped me cope with all this added pressure. Because again, at the same time for me, when I went to Commonwealth Games, I knew I was a medal contender. I knew I could maybe win or at least be on the podium. So I really had to focus at this point. But there was still just that little itch that I need to see my son. I need to hang out with him. And I was able to do that. And I was really grateful being able to just, take off the green and gold, just put on my normal mum attire, hang out with Gabe. And then when it was time to go back, I felt like I was ready to push on again for the next few more weeks. I love this photo. This is my family. So part of the amazing things of being at the Gold Coast was the fact that because I was Australian, that my whole family were able to come and be there. Very big blended family. It's a really great example of like, for people that you love, you can sometimes just hold your tongue and just be civil. And there are some people in that photo who don't talk as much. But they all, because they all love me, because they all love Gabe, I think more for Gabe, they all come together to watch me and all wore the same t-shirt and supported me. And it was really a great moment to have my whole family there. And, but I think, a lot of it, was to do with Gabe because I want people there and I want people there for Gabe. And he really, when he came along, he really glue our family together because, as I said, I was raising Gabe on my own at the time. So when he came along, my whole family got together to help him and help me. And during that time, I did meet somebody who started to become a friend. Someone I used to go to gym, started going to gym with more and more. And 10 years later, him and I now have a child together. So that's the man next to me. We only just started hanging out towards Commonwealth Games, but I had something to do, but I did invite him. And that photo is a start of just all our whole family coming together. And I really love that moment that we were able to have that as a family. I don't think we'll get that photo ever again. So this is where I want to talk about where things got a bit more difficult unexpectedly. So I had this amazing 2 years. Now, a lot of that came down to the fact that I had amazing family. I had the dedication. I had a great coach. I had great support down in Tasmania in my little bubble. And I was able to be able to do everything. And with the TIS, all that, I was able to do everything in my little bubble, in my shed in Glenorchy, that I was training from. Everything, I had all the resources I needed. I was able to get access to through my family, through my coach, and we're able to just create this own little support network. And it worked well, and it led into Commonwealth Games, and it worked well. For the Olympic campaign, it got a little bit more difficult. It got a little bit more complicated, and this is where I needed more support from outside of my little bubble, which I didn't really get. And I want to talk about that a little bit more now. And I had this huge high, and just quickly put it bluntly, 2018 and 2020 was one of the worst campaigns and lead ups at my career, which is quite devastating to know that was the end of my career, was this campaign. So this is so with so what I've got here is a timetable. So this timetable is basically what my Olympic campaign looked like to try to get to 2020 Olympics after Commonwealth Games. There was a bit of downtime, just a couple months, but then we decided, okay, let's try for the Olympics. I think in my mind, I just expected it to sort of be the same as how it was for going to the Commonwealth Games, but it wasn't. It ended up being a much, much more complicated campaign. So to get to the Olympics, you had to qualify and had to compete at least 6 times and get a certain amount of points to get to the Olympics. To get it to really as simplified as possible, you had to compete at least 6 times at these qualified events or qualifying events. They were all over the world, and they were all different types of levels. You really want to get to as many gold competitions as possible to get the most amount of points. This required international travel. And the person with the most amount of points at the end of the qualifying period would be eligible to qualify for the Olympics. So I was again one of the contenders. There was about 4 of us, and they were only going to take 3 to the Olympics out of the whole entire team. So I was one of the contenders. So in the 18-month time frame. So I had to go to nationals, which is 4 days away. I went to Worlds in 2018, which was in Ashgabat, in Turkmenistan. So it was 10 days away. Afira Games was in Northern Territory, which is another 4 days. Samoa, which was Oceanias, and Samoa was 10 days away. I was also at San Diego in September 2019, 10 days away. I had to go to Qatar in December and actually came home during Christmas morning. So I missed Christmas that year in 2019. Went to Oz Open, which was 4 days away, and then we had the lockdown. So there was a lot of requirements to be away, and that in itself put a lot of stress on my family. It put a lot of stress on me. It put a lot of stress on Gabe. And when I did speak up about this, there wasn't much support. I didn't get much response other than, too bad, if you want to make the Olympics, you got to go. Which is totally fine, but and I'll speak about one particular incident that always was stuck with me and really changed the course and my mentality of my Olympic camp. So as I said, lots of travel, lots of time away, and yeah, it was really hard on my family. And as I said, when I spoke up about this, and I'll talk about these moments in a minute, there just was not much empathy or compassion when it came to the struggles that I was actually starting to voice to the weightlifting federation, and I'll talk about those in a moment right now. So this photo. This photo here is a very big turning point of my career when it came to like just the mentality and the respect, and me realizing that there wasn't much support for me as a mum athlete. So this photo was taken via FaceTime. I was in Samoa. Now I'd already noticed that Gabe was he was 3. He just turned 3. So, he was starting to be able to voice more about, mummy being away. He started presenting like some more anxiety and separation anxiety, where things like if I was just going to the shop, if I was leaving, he thought I was going to be away for a long time. So I started seeing throughout that first part of that year of 2000, especially 2019, that he was starting to struggle with anxiety and separation from me. And I started to question, was it because I was competing a lot and being away a lot more than what I should have been? And I had a big event coming up. It was in Samoa, and I was going to be away for nearly 10 days. Now, with weightlifting, it's an individual sport. It's not like a team sport. So everything's done, your performance is on the platform and it's your performance. I was a 90 kilo class lifter, or 86 kilo class, 87, sorry. It was they had a change of bodyweight categories, but I was like a heavyweight. I was a heavyweight weightlifter, and we always competed at the end of the competitions. So essentially for me, it meant that if I went to Samoa for those 10 days, I'd probably be just sitting around in Samoa for a good 7 to 8 days before I actually competed. So I actually asked the IWF, hey, it was a gold event, so it was a major event for the Olympic campaign. At this point, I was the only athlete in Australia who actually went to Worlds in 2018, so I was actually sitting a step above everybody. So I was in a really good spot into qualifying for the Olympics at this point. And I asked them, I actually voiced that my son's really struggling with me going away so much. I know that I'm going to be at Samoa for a good 7 to 8 days before I actually compete. Can I arrive on day 5? That will give me a few more extra couple of days, enough days to acclimatize, get a couple of training sessions in, and then compete. I even offered, I said, I'm happy to pay the difference. If I had to get a different ticket, I was happy to fund myself. They turned around and said no, because it didn't look good to the junior athletes, because they had junior athletes coming, and it wouldn't look good to them if they had a senior athlete arrive at a different day. That was their response. And that because I signed an agreement that I was part of the team, that I had to be there for the whole duration of the event. So that reluctantly I said, okay, well, I got to go because it's at a gold event. I need to be at this event for Olympics. So I made that sacrifice and that choice to go. Very resentful, very like, I don't want to be here. I shouldn't be here. And then, but I was, I had there was a coach up there who was quite supportive, and he understood, and he was, he was a bit of a shoulder to vent to and talk to about it. And, he just said, like, get your head down, just come back here and we'll see what we can do after this. So, but again, that was just his own opinion. He wasn't someone who had the weight to be able to actually say, this is wrong. It was just someone to vent to. And I think I was about day 6 in was halfway through in, and it was really close to my birthday. And I knew Gabe was having a hard time. Mum had told me that, he was having a bit of a hard time and he missed his mummy, and we would do FaceTime every night and that sort of thing. And then I got a call from Mum, and she said, I got a text from Mum saying, you need to call Gabe. He's really upset. He thinks it's your birthday. He wants to blow candles out with you. So I rang him, and this is the FaceTime. So he's there, and he wanted to blow out candles with me. And I remember, like, we sang happy birthday, he blew out a candle, and then he's like, okay, mummy, you can go now, bye. And then we hung up. And I remember just being so, well, I went to the toilets and cried. I was like, I don't want to be here. I shouldn't be here. Just the guilt of being there, and just realizing like how much, or feeling like how much my value, how little I was valued as an athlete. And like my personal life and my personal well-being, like the support just wasn't there. I didn't want to be at the competition. But again, just being the person I am, I just kept it quiet. I got there. I did the results that I needed. I got the gold medal that the weightlifting federation needed, and I went back home, and that was that. Um, and and I pushed through. I kept my head down. Same for San Diego. I already knew. I was like, they're not going to help me, so I'm just going to have to push through. So I spoke to my family, and they're like, okay, well, we need to try and work all this out to try and help Gabe. And you got these competitions coming up, and it was just like, well, I either quit or I suck it up, and I decided to suck it up. But it really put a big barrier on my motivation. All of a sudden, I used to have this motivation of, I'm going to be a better athlete. I'm going to do this for my son. I'm going to be a role model. And then all of a sudden, my motivation was just get through it so you can quit. So leading into the Olympics, just get through it so you can retire and you can stop hurting everybody around you. So this moment here was the moment where I realized, okay, this is just, I didn't want to let go. I think, it was almost like my coach had been through so much, my family had been through so much, I'd been through so much. We only had about 6 months left to go. So we just pushed through. And then obviously 2020 happened, COVID happened, and the postponement of the Olympics. It sort of got to a point with the Olympics where I got to a point where I think I just didn't really wanted to go anymore, because again, the anxiety that was coming through, knowing and feeling like I wasn't valued, knowing the pressure and the not, I don't want to say damage, the stress it was putting on my entire family, particularly Gay. I started to just feel like it's not worth it anymore. And then when they postponed the Olympic trials and Olympics, a lot of athletes were in the same boat as me, not particularly with pregnancy or not with childhood, but there are a lot of athletes who were like towards the end of the career or thought that 2020 was going to be their last Olympics. You push your body so much to absolute exhaustion to then be told, hey, you got to do this for another year. I just couldn't do it. There was just, it was just too much. And it was too much isolation, too much loneliness, too much feeling like this is just not worth it anymore. So I made a decision to be like, no, I'm done. I'm not doing it. And it was heartbreaking, but also at the same time, it was relieving, because I just all of a sudden just put this pressure off me. This big elephant in the room that was causing so much stress, so much pain and heartache. It was impacting my relationships with my family, with my partner, with my son. It was enough was enough. It was just enough was enough. And when I actually made that call, because I think I probably wanted to quit, or I don't want to say quit, but I'd had enough for quite a while. And when I finally said, again, stood up for myself, stood up for my family, for my son, and said, enough's enough, I'm not doing this anymore, there was a sense of relief. There was a great sense of relief. And I think that there just shows how much I was just ready to walk away. There you go. Thank you. All right. But there was one around 20 and God, was it 2020? There was one though, however, there was one thing that did happen at the end of my retirement, which I'll talk about, which I think truly believe saved me, because I was in a very dark place by the time I left weightlifting. I found myself in a very dark place. But there was one thing that happened that I really brought myself out of it, and I was able to walk away, and I think just put it all in the past. Like as soon as I walked away, as soon as I saw this new direction in my life, I just put my whole sport behind me straight away. It was just done. And even then, when I did announce my retirement, I didn't get any sort of word from the federation. I just walked away quietly, and that was that. There was no grand ending. There was no grand nothing. So 12 years of elite level sport to then just sort of fizzle out, just fizzle away, and just basically disappear. So it was really hard to deal with that. And I did find myself in a very dark place. I felt like I was just disposable trash to a sport, to a place that I just, had spent so long dedicating my life to, and, putting my son through stress as well to be able to perform. But after I retired and I announced my retirement, very, very soon after, I actually found that I was pregnant again. His name is Dorian. So in August 2021, I gave birth to my second son, Dorian, also known as Dory. When I found out I was pregnant again, it was a different response. So I had just announced my retirement. I just made that decision. And then very soon after I found out I was pregnant. And I think, again, there's lots of tears when I found out, but it was a bit different. There was still feelings of devastation, but I think it was more devastated for the lead up to this moment. I hadn't really spoken to anyone about how I was feeling. I hadn't really, voiced how much pain or anxiety that I was feeling from that campaign, and all the feelings of mum guilt of what I was doing, or what my career was doing to my son. And then when I found I was pregnant, it was like the door was shut. And I think it was more like tears of relief. Like, oh, okay, this is it now. This is my new path. I did get like my exciting pregnancy announcements. I did the whole little cute pregnancy announcements with my family, and everyone was really happy for me. My partner and I were happy. It did take a little moment to just sort of, taking what was happening. But I really believe that if Dory hadn't come along, or that pregnancy hadn't come along, I probably would have kept on going in a pretty dark space. And he really was my saving grace. He was everything um, that I think I needed it at that time. So what now? So Dorian was born in 2021, August 2021. I started to I retired from weightlifting. I started having an interest in like leadership positions in sport. So I have had connections with the AIS, with the Female Performance and Health Initiative. I also was part of the Accelerate program, which was helping women in leaderships in sport. I did start to take a bit of a step back from that, because again, I just want to start focusing more on my family. But there's still that athlete in me. There's still just that I need something to focus on. I probably just need still a little bit of me time. So I actually went back to old roots. When I was in high school, I was really good at shot put and track and field. So I've actually gone back to athletics and doing track and field. One of the best things about doing shot put for me is that it doesn't hurt my knees. I can work in range of motions where I can actually still do things and perform things without pain. So a lot of times when you are doing sport at elite level, towards the end your body does start to hurt, things start to break. But I have found a sweet spot in the sport that allows me to perform at a high level. So even though I am a master, so I'm over 30, so I'm considered a masters athlete, I'm still kicking along the young ones. I am open state record holder, and I have gone to open nationals. I am planning on going to open nationals again this year, and also competing at a couple other interstate competitions. So we'll see how it goes. I'm really enjoying it, and I think it's nice to be out of sport just to enjoy it. And my kids do come with me, my partner comes, the kids watch me on a Saturday. There is less pressure, but the meters and the distance are creeping up, and we'll see what happens the next few years. But it is nice sort of just taking that step back, and just being able to do something that I enjoy, do it at a relatively still competitive level. Shot put, it's great where I live. There is a shot put circle at an oval at a park that I think no one knows about, which I found. So it's only 10 minutes away from my house. So that's worked out really well. The kids come and they'll take their bikes and stuff and ride around the oval while I'm throwing the shot put. Abe, as you can see there he is with me there at Masters Nationals, where I got a PB. So I was able to ring the PB bell, which also was a Masters Australian record. But you know, they come with me now, and it's just a little bit more enjoyable. And yeah, so that's what when it comes to sport that I'm doing now. I'm just doing something more for fun, which is a bit of a change and a shift, but I'm still competitive. And I still like being competitive. I think I'm always going to be. So I found that sweet spot where I'm able to still train, be competitive, but also be able to have time with my kids and all that sort of stuff as well. I'm a PE teacher full time, working as a PE teacher, and as I said, Dorian now is 4. He's now 4. He starts kinder next year, and you know all this stuff. And here I am today talking about my journey. And again, a lot of the struggles that I talk about, stuff that I've realized now. I didn't really realize it at the time. I know I was an athlete, just kept my head down. I did what I needed to do. I always did things with integrity. I never really spoke up. But the more I've educated myself and the more that I've become more of a leader within sports, I now can see back and realize there were a lot of times there where I wasn't supported in a way that I should have been supported or could have been supportive. And one of the reasons that this speech actually came out was because of the the AIS recommendations for parenthood and elite sport that have come out, which if I had them in my day, if you ever have, I'm sure you know, you'll get a chance to read them they are published out online now. But the support that's now being recommended for mothers and athletes is just absolutely amazing. And if I had that type of support that they're recommending now for when I was an athlete, I think my story, particularly that 18 to 2020 story, could have been very, very different. So I love the fact that I've been able to be a part of this movement and also share my story with other women. Obviously, with my story, it doesn't actually just have to apply to elite level. It's with anything. And one of the biggest things I want to be able to say is that in any sort of aspect of life, when people have a baby and women have a baby or women are pregnant, it's not the end of your career, and people shouldn't see that as a burden or see it as a barrier. I personally believe if you have someone who is a mum, you should go, oh my God, wow, I've got a really great asset here. Whether it's in any sort of sport or any sort of career or anything in life, if a woman comes to you and she has a child, that should be seen as like a blessing and an advantage and an amazing thing. Where I think that in my career, a lot of times it was seen as a burden, and I felt like I was a burden. But when you actually took away that image and you saw my results, the best time that I ever competed and the best results I ever did was that first 3 years after Gabe was born. So, you know, and that's the evidence there. But we still have people who see a person who rocks up to a sport or rocks up to an event and they have a child. It's sort of like, oh, here we go. Like, you know, are they going to be loud? Are they going to talk? Are they going to be disruptive? But, you know, if there was support in place, like one of the examples is that their recommendation is in sporting bodies at national events that they should provide a childcare service for mums so they can drop their child off and compete. You know, so then, yeah, the child isn't going to be loud. They're not going to be a burden. But, you know, we have this assumption that automatically it's just put in a box of it's going to be an issue, where if we're just able to provide some form of service and support to mothers and see it as an advantage, then I think mothers are unstoppable. They're absolutely unstoppable. And you have such a huge advantage as a person as a whole if a mother comes to you. And that's my hope when I talk about this stuff, that we can change that narrative and that assumption that a person with a child is going to be a burden, or they're going to be a challenge, or they're going to have hurdles. Where I think that if someone has a child with them, you should see them as someone who is really dedicated. There's someone who's really resilient. There's someone who's got really great time management, and there's someone who actually gets stuff done. I said it before, the hardest I ever trained was that hour and a half window that I had every day to train for Commonwealth Games, where when I was at university, I had like 3 hours and I used to dawdle and do a few extra lifts, do some stretching, hang out with friends, talk, all that sort of stuff. I didn't train anywhere near as hard when I was at university, when I had all the time in the world in my 20s and had 3 hours to train at a time, to that time where I was a mum and I had an hour and a half. I got a lot more stuff done in that hour and a half than I ever did in the 3 hours when I was at university. And I think that just comes down to that, you know, I had stuff to do. I had a child waiting for me. So I had that hour and a half. I was grateful to have that hour and a half. I had the intrinsic motivation to become a better person for my child. So I trained really hard. I got my stuff done. And then when I got into the car, I put my bags down. I got back home, and then I was a mum again until I went back to training the next day. And so, yeah, that's that is my story. I just quickly over time. So again, my shift in Australian sport is that we can help mothers grow. We can provide support where just eliminate this expectation that once someone's had a baby, that's it. They're just going to be a mum and that's it. That's all they're going to do. Where I think I've provided great evidence that you can be a lot more than that. You just need to have that support and have people to be like, just to get rid of this narrative that it's going to be a hurdle and that it's going to be a burden. And just to finish off, just an Instagram post that I put up during my Commonwealth Games campaign. When I fell pregnant, I thought it would be the biggest hurdle I'd ever have to face. Amongst all my training, studying at uni, and my career aspirations, I was only starting my life. I never realized how much I was missing before you came along. When you arrived, you didn't become a hurdle. Instead, you became my strength, my inspiration to be the best I can be. For that, I thank you, Gabriel. Thank you for making my life better, for making me challenge myself. I wouldn't be here today without you, and now I couldn't imagine my life without you, not even for a second.
Thank you so much, Kaity. I think I laughed and I cried and I had goosebumps the whole way through that.
Like, even years later, there's still moments like when I talk about the Samoa and I talk about Gabe. I got to try really hard not to choke up. And like, you know, it's years later. Like Samoa happened in 2019. Like that's what's nearly 7 years later, and it's still like that feeling, that guilt, that feeling. It still plays with me. It's still there. It's still raw, and I think it always will be.
And I think it plays on all mothers' hearts. It can easily pull those strings so quickly.
Yeah, I know.
But it's just amazing how it really highlights that intrinsic motivation is such an asset. And, you know, for any athlete that's going through this, like how much this can improve their success is amazing. And for any coach that's watching this and can, you know, really see the potential and the asset and the small little tweaks that they can do to be so much more supportive. And then even on that club and organizational level, you know, other people are doing it well, universities are doing it well, schools are doing it well, and we just need to borrow a little bit of what's already working. And it's not, you know, and the amount that women get done in a short amount of time is incredible. So it's, although it might be slightly different, it's not actually any harder work. It's just supportive. And thank you so much for sharing your story.
Thank you. Yeah, I definitely like in saying that, like, I remember someone asked me, oh, what's it like having, like, being a mum and being an athlete? Like, how has it changed your, like, your body and your physical capabilities? I was like, actually hasn't. It's just that, well, I think my body became stronger after having a child, but it's just more, sometimes I go to training and I've only had 2 hours sleep. Like, you know, and someone asked me, how do you do it? And I was like, I'm just tired all the time and I have a lot of caffeine. Like, you know, I think it's just that, it's having that honest conversation. Like I talk about it and yes, I did it, but it was hard. Like it was hard and people just sort of see the medals and the end result and the positive stuff, but they don't hear the challenges that are behind it. And I like to sort of open up that dialogue about, you know, finding out you're pregnant and like being devastated. Like, you know, that's something that we're not allowed to talk about, some of those honest, raw, you know, feelings that we have that we feel guilty for having. And we, you know, women should be able to talk about that more as well. So.
Absolutely. Well, if you want to follow Kaity's journey, we'll link in her Instagram page there so you can see what she's up to these days. But yeah, she's an incredible source of inspiration. So if it's possible for Kaity to do this, it's possible for everyone else to go through a similar process. Obviously, there's more policies and things that are coming into place, but we can always do our best to raise the standard for women, especially in Tasmania, who are at the heart of what we're doing here.
No worries. No, thank you for the opportunity. Like anytime I can share my story and inspire anyone, I'll take the opportunity. So I love doing this sort of stuff. So any questions, anything, if you follow me and want to ask a question about anything, I will definitely reply. So thank you.
If this episode resonated with you, if you believe in visibility, representation and strong pathways for women in sport, we invite you to join us. Women's Sport and Recreation Tasmania is a growing community of state sporting bodies, clubs, women and allies working together to make sport more inclusive, connected and supportive across our state. By becoming a WSRT member, you're helping amplify women's voices, stories and leadership, both on the field and behind the scenes. Head to wsrt.org.au/membership to learn more about becoming a member. Because when we can see women in sport, we can be them.